Noon on a bright Sunday in the middle of Tokyo. The most famous electronics district in the world has just closed its main street to traffic, the way it does every weekend, so that thousands of people can walk down the middle of the road in the sun. It's supposed to be the safest kind of crowd there is. In about 3 minutes, 7 of those people will be dead. And here's the part that stays with you. The man who killed them had been typing out his plan in public on his phone for anyone to read, right up until 20 minutes before he did it. Nobody stopped him. This is the story of the Akihabara Massacre. It was June 8, 2008. At around 12:33 in the afternoon, on the corner of Chodori and Kanda-Myojin Street, a rented truck came flying toward the crossing and ran straight through a red light. It plowed into the people in the intersection. 5 of them were hit. 2 young men, both just 19, Kazunori Fujino and Takahiro Kamaguchi, who were friends, and a 74-year-old man, Katsuhiko Nakamura, were struck so hard they wouldn't survive. But the truck was only the first weapon. The driver climbed out, and in his hand was a military-style dagger, and he started stabbing anyone near him. He moved through the crowd, stabbing people one after another. And when bystanders and off-duty medics rushed in to help the injured, he stabbed them too. 4 more people were killed with the knife: Naoki Miyamoto, 31, Mitsuru Matsui, 33, Kazuhiro Koiwa, 47, and Mai Muto, a 21-year-old woman. In total, 7 people were killed and around 10 more were wounded. And the whole thing, from the truck running the light to the moment police cornered him in a side alley about 170 meters away, lasted roughly 2 to 3 minutes. He didn't run far. He didn't really try to escape. A police officer tackled him while he still had the blade. And that was it. The man was 25 years old. His name was Tomohiro Kato. Everything about this attack was planned in advance. That's what makes it so hard to sit with. 2 days before, on June 6th, Kato walked into a military supply shop in Fukui, on the other side of the country. He spent about 20 minutes there. He bought leather gloves, a telescopic baton, and the dagger, a Smith & Wesson blade. The store's security camera reportedly caught him chatting with the clerk and even making little stabbing motions, testing how it felt in his hand. 2 days before he used it on real people. He needed money to rent the truck, so the day before the attack he actually came to Akihabara to sell his own computer and some software to raise the cash. Then he rented the truck and drove roughly 100 kilometers into the city. And the timing wasn't random either. He waited. Chodori only becomes that car-free pedestrian paradise at noon on Sundays. He knew that. He waited for the street to fill with people before he started. He even cleaned out his phone beforehand, deleted his contacts and his messages. When he was asked about it later, he reportedly said he did it so he wouldn't cause trouble for the people he knew. Think about that. He was worried about inconveniencing his contacts on his way to murder strangers. Bon? So why? Why does a 25-year-old auto worker decide to do this to people he's never met? There isn't one clean answer. But when you lay out his last few months, a pattern comes into focus. Kato was a temporary worker at an auto parts factory. Dispatched labor, the kind of job with no security where you can be let go at any moment. And in early June, he became convinced that moment had come. 3 days before the attack, he showed up to work and couldn't find his uniform where it should have been. He took that as proof he'd been fired. Now, sir, it said that he wasn't actually being fired that day, that it may have been a simple mix-up. But in his mind, it was over. He'd been thrown away. That fear of being discarded landed on top of something deeper. He was completely alone, and the one place he felt like he existed at all was an anonymous online message board. This is the part that really explains the crime. On that board, Kato had built a character for himself. He'd become a kind of regular, posting these self-mocking messages about being ugly and unlovable, and people would respond, and for a while that attention was the only thing he had. It was his community. It was honestly the only place he felt seen. And then someone started impersonating him on it. Trolls, imposters, posting as him, hijacking the one identity that felt like his, turning his own little corner against him. He became obsessed with it. He kept posting, trying to prove which posts were really him, getting more and more frantic. As his job fell apart and his real life emptied out, the board was all he had left. And it felt like even that was being taken from him. His posts in those final days are genuinely painful to read. He wrote things like, "I don't have a single friend, and I won't in the future." He wrote that if he'd only had a girlfriend, none of this would have happened. And one line that got quoted everywhere afterward, he wrote that he was lower than trash because at least trash gets recycled. Then that morning, driving toward the city, the posts became a countdown. "I'll kill people in Akihabara." A description of the plan: use the vehicle first, then the knife. And finally, minutes before, something like, "It's time, I'm going." Here's the detail that haunts people. Kato himself later said that part of why he posted all of it was that he was hoping somebody would see it, that the police would notice and come and stop him. Nobody did. Now let's talk about how he got here, because a person doesn't arrive at this out of nowhere. And this is where we have to be careful, because a lot of what's said about his childhood is exactly that. Things that are said, not things that are proven in a courtroom. So take this part as context, not as verified fact. Kato grew up in Aomori in the north of Japan. As a kid, by every account, he was impressive. Top grades, a strong athlete, president of his tennis club. The classic successful child. And then, from what relatives and neighbors have described, a lot of pressure was put on him and his younger brother to stay that way. Some of what's been reported is disturbing. And again, this comes from family members and neighbors rather than any official record. It's said that the parenting was extremely strict, that his father would scold him just for smiling, telling him to keep a serious face. His mother, a former teacher, is described as intensely controlling of his studies. There are claims, and I want to stress these are alleged, that as a child he was sometimes made to eat his food off the floor, that he was made to stand outside for hours in the deep winter snow as punishment, and even that his mother once pushed him under the water in the bathtub because he was struggling with arithmetic. One account has his own mother later saying that eating dinner with him had become frightening. I can't tell you every one of those things is true, but you can see the shape of it. A childhood built around performance and control, where love felt conditional on being the best. And then, when he hit an elite high school and his ranking crashed and he failed his university exams, when he stopped being the golden child, it's as if the whole foundation went out from under him. So put the pieces together. A fragile sense of self built entirely on being exceptional that collapses. Years of deepening isolation, a precarious job he believed he'd just lost, and an online world that had become his only home, now overrun by people mocking and impersonating him. One psychiatrist who examined the case pointed to that gap, the gap between the idealized child he was raised to be and the ordinary struggling adult he actually was, as central to who he became. None of this is a defense. Millions of people carry childhoods just as harsh and loneliness just as deep, and they never hurt a soul. But three things turned his private despair into a public massacre. He came to believe the world had wronged him and owed him a reckoning. He chose an audience. He wanted to be witnessed. And in the end, he stopped seeing the crowd as people at all. They became a stand-in for a world he blamed. That last step, where individual human beings stop being real to you, is the one that makes the horror possible. The courts didn't accept any excuse. Tomohiro Kato was found fully responsible, sentenced to death in 2011, and after his appeals failed, the sentence was finalized in 2015. He was executed in the summer of 2022. The aftermath rippled outward for years. Japan tightened its laws on selling daggers, Akihabara suspended its Sunday pedestrian street for a time, and, tragically, Kato's younger brother, who said he couldn't live with the shame, took his own life in 2014. But a verdict closes a case. It doesn't answer the question underneath it, because if you look back at those final days, the warning signs weren't hidden. They weren't coded. He typed them out, in public, for anyone to read. The loneliness was right there on the screen. The despair was right there. The plan itself was right there. And by his own account, some part of him was screaming for someone to notice in time. I'm not saying any one person could have stopped it, But I am saying it's worth remembering that the people who do something like this almost never appear out of thin air. They fade out slowly, usually in plain sight. So maybe the takeaway is small and human. Notice the people around you who are quietly going quiet. Answer the message, because sometimes the distance between a person feeling invisible and a person doing something unthinkable is smaller than we'd ever want to believe. Thanks for watching. If this story got under your skin, subscribe and stick around, because understanding why these things happen is the first real step towards stopping the next one.